Okay.
All right.
Okay. All right, guys. Welcome to this episode of the BakeSmart Bench. We had so much fun introducing ourselves at the last episode, and lucky us, we actually got somebody to comment and give us a topic to discuss. So we want to thank Alex from Cakes D Sabores. Happens to be a BakeSmart customer down in Dayton Beach, Boca
Boca
Raton.
Raton.
Yeah,
Mhm.
Boca Raton, Florida. They have an awesome little bakery down there. His wife and mother-in-law started it, and we've had the opportunity to go visit it. It's a great little shop. So he actually commented on our last video that he would love to hear from us around the topic of quality control, specifically around the custom order portion of the bakery world. So we're going to just use that comment as our guide for today's discussion. So let's kick it off.
I'm actually pretty excited about this topic, and I was thinking about it when you mentioned it earlier that this is kind of the question that Alex asked, and it got me thinking about like our varied backgrounds, right? In the style of custom cake shop we ran, and even the size of our management teams and the size of our staff, and just like our own roles inside the industry is so varied. So I'm really curious too. To hear about not only the topic of quality control for custom cakes before they go out the door, but also just in general. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
And maybe that actually kicks off. Maybe we should give just a little background of the size operation we all were part of. I know, Arie, you worked at a bunch of different places.
Mhm.
My bakery experience, day in, day out, is in one bakery. So I think it'll be a little different conversation with you when we get to you on that. But
Yeah, sure.
yeah, why don't you start off?
Hot seat, Arie. That's what I'm doing.
Ooh. I mean, working in different kind of places around the industry, I think quality control and custom orders, what's going out the door looks, very different from place to place. But I think to me, the mindset and managing quality in everything you're doing is kind of the same, or maybe should be the same from location to location. Obviously, it's going to differ a little bit based on the company and the people. But with me having more of a back of house production background and managing production teams, I think I tried to make quality and quality control really the kind of the foundation and the highest requirement of everything we did. So
So
I
would you say
will
that
admit, oh, go
I'm
ahead.
going to I have this, I was thinking about this too. Would you say that it was a part of the culture that you built?
Yeah,
Okay.
I think it has to be. I
Yep.
mean, it doesn't have to be, but it really helps if it is. I mean, I am guilty as a bakery, as a partner and as a manager for years. I was notoriously lax on certain things. I didn't always care about, your uniform, or if you took a few smoke breaks, or if you showed up 5 minutes late, or what, those things I was very, very flexible on. To me, where you ingrain the culture of quality in every product is that expectation of what's going out the door. So I don't care about that stuff, but if you don't produce a high quality product every single day, there's no point in even coming to work.
Right.
Because,
Yeah.
I think for me and for most of our customers at BakeSmart, we're independent, or we're specialty producers. So our job is to be better than what you can get at, say a grocery store. I'm not sure if we're able to name big box stores on here, but you know, you could go to any one of the big stores and get a cake for $10, $15, $20, right? Why are you going to spend 60 to 75 with my bakery? It's because we're proud of what we do. We put out a great product, and Arie will want to smack you if you don't. So,
Well, and in the Midwest
know.
too, because you were mostly up in Michigan and stuff, like the Midwest is saturated with bakery. So the quality of a product leaving probably has a lot to do with why people choose you. It's not
It's
proximity
huge.
because you could throw a rock and hit another bakery.
Yep.
You know, it has to
Exactly.
do with quality. So
Yeah.
from what I'm hearing from you, you ingrained it in the culture of the people that work for you, right? Where you were a little lax on uniform and a little lax on break policy. You had a
Exactly.
strictness there. And so it is like a political thing to choose what you're going to pay a little bit more attention to, right? Political
Exactly.
in terms of, you
Exactly.
know, but wait,
But
it is
And you
I,
similar.
hear, oh, sorry, no, you hear like football coaches talk about it the same way. It's like, we're going to practice quality every day. That's what matters the most. And that's, if you do that, hopefully you'll
so
be successful.
my
Yeah.
question is, how did you do that?
Uh,
What was the guiding light, right? Like what was the goal and then what was the margin
yeah.
for error in getting to that goal, right? That's what I would want to know too.
That's a great question. I think the goal for me managing production teams is a perfect product every day, right? In
Right.
whatever we're baking, bread, pastry, cake, whatever it's going to be. Um, Now, trying to get to that goal, you're always going to have days where you're going to have small variances in products. Every bake shift is going to be a little bit different around the country. Weather's going to be different. People are going to be different. Skill levels, so those are all things that you got to look at on a daily basis. So, is there a little room for error, a little cushion, or grace? Absolutely. The things that I focused on, I think, where my kind of, I don't know, maybe anger or urge to step in and really kind of aggressively manage staff was where I noticed, hey, are we getting lazy on this?
Right.
Are we skipping certain steps?
Right.
Are we not doing things that we should do because it's a little bit of extra work and we don't want to? I'm shutting that down immediately.
Yeah. Did you walk away from your pastry cream while it was on the stove? Like, what are you
Exactly.
doing? Where
You
did
know,
you go? It's not time for a
exactly.
walkabout.
Yep. Did
So,
you leave this in the cooler because you didn't want to just walk it over to the freezer, which was a little full? So there has to be that level of, yeah, sometimes things are good enough and it's not worth worrying about and it's still a great product. But then to me, you hit that product quality level where, okay, this has to be addressed. And now,
right.
because
And
again,
what, yeah,
you know,
what happened, right? What happened to this that got to here? That was a big thing
mhm,
for me. We were a scratch natural. So everything
yeah,
was done from scratch, right? So if I walked in and saw something that was flat, but it had
yeah,
been wrapped and put away like it was finished, I'd pull it off the shelf and put it on the table and be like, Pardon my language, but what the F is this?"
mhm,
Like in the kindest way, what happened? Why did we say that this was okay? Why
mhm,
are we just putting out product that isn't at all near quality? The lemon bread is supposed to be pound cake right now, and you've given me a brick, right?
right,
That's black on the
right,
bottom. Who did this? And then what were the steps that you took to get here? Did you under cream? Because the
mhm,
creaming is the biggest part of that particular product. It even says what shade of blonde you're looking for, right?
mhm,
When you cream that process. So if you skipped it, then that's the issue. And then for me, because of the way I drove the culture in my business, is it was an office conversation. What's happening in your life that made you think that this was okay? And
So
how,
give a
right?
little, for context, give a little background. So Ari, you've worked in different size establishments. Like, can you just like really quickly overview the different types of shops and sizes that you've worked in, that you've seen kind of this, or where you managed the quality aspects of back of house, and like how big was the team? How
What
often
was the
did you
output?
those kind of production schedule? Because how I'm going to address this is very much from a freezer to sale perspective. I have a really strong
yep,
opinion on that part of it. I think you bring a very different opinion on it. And I think it's helpful as somebody who's watching this to get a little context about size team, how you saw it, from what angle you saw it at.
yeah, yeah, for sure. I think without going too in depth, the bulk of my experience is going to be in mid mid-size to large size wholesale and retail bakeries. So I've done restaurants and catering and all that kind of stuff, but I think in mid-size and large retail and wholesale bakeries specifically, I think I've landed on generally a little bit more on the cake and, or I'm sorry, on the pastry and bread side. Um, plenty of cakes, but I think a little bit more on the pastry and bread side.
What was the size of your team in those applications?
Generally between 10 and 25.
Bakers, not
Yes.
decorators, bakers,
Yeah.
mixers,
Well,
oven guys.
I guess decorators and bakers. That's a great question. So I would say on average, let's say 12 to 15 on average.
Okay.
So, not a couple people, not a tiny operation, but also not like, a national bread producer kind of thing.
But it's enough personalities and skill sets to have to manage to throw at the quality of something, right? Teaching 15 people to make a single product the same way every day is no small feat, friend. So
it's at a certain point you've got a small staff and it's easy to manage, but as you grow, more locations, more staff, what's the basketball saying? You switch from man to man to zone defense kind of thing, and
right.
you have to.
I have no idea what you're talking about, but I'm going to agree.
I do.
Yeah. You got to manage areas of your bakery instead of just individuals,
Got it, okay.
But
I'm like, yeah, sports. I get that.
yeah, sports ball, yeah. No, that growth and and what we preach in BakeSmart with using systems to help us grow and streamline. Whether you're just a couple people or a team of 15 to 25, whatever it is, bakers. The management, I guess, path that I took was starting at the basics, at bringing in quality products, and then just executing to your standards every day. And that's where my focus is even if a product didn't turn out well, are you operating in your system to your standards, or are you being lazy and people are just going to go down the street to the grocery store because that's what they can do and it's easy, but we need to give them a reason to come to us. So
they're going to hit the Jewel-Osco on their way home from work instead of stopping.
Yeah, and I think that's a real, it's actually in today's climate, a real challenge that retail bakeries specifically are having. Even more importantly, I think now, than in a long time, and probably the most, is these cottage bakers. So people who are, you're used to maybe be a decorator at your local, cake shop bakery that then decided, you know what, because of poor management and poor systems, it's easier for me to make similar amount of money with way less headache if I'm just doing this and selling my cakes through Facebook or Instagram or whatever. And I think that retail bakeries are really up against that challenge right now, where they're having a hard time finding the talent, especially in the decorator side. Obviously, bakers, I think, trades by large are were dying, and I think they're coming back. And I think that the bakery industry needs to really fight for that. And I think the RBA and different organizations are doing a good job to start to show younger generation, hey, there's a viable career path for you. Specifically on the baking side, I think is more of a trade. I think the decorator side is a little different because you can run a business doing it all out of your home pretty easily these days, and it's pretty common.
I'll tell you, one of my most skilled decorators that I had on the team at the bakery that I was chief of operations of was a tattoo artist who was like, our area is saturated with tattoo artists. I want a little bit more consistent work. I don't want it to be on at that point you're a small business, right? Being a tattoo artist or an artist of any kind. And so I hired him in and I was like, have you ever played with frosting? So let me put you on these cookies. Yeah. And it was so great. And it was really, really neat. And that was kind of my foray into hunting down people who wouldn't have had a chance elsewhere because pastry school's expensive or they didn't do so great and their grades weren't good, and they had a passion for it. And I found that, coming back to quality control, is that when you encouraged people and gave them an opportunity and taught them a skill or a trade, they had a bigger kind of gratitude and also just not ego. What's the word I'm looking for?
They had more skin in the game. They had more
pride.
Connection.
Yeah, and pride. They had pride in this thing that they had, and so
that's huge. Yeah,
it's huge. And then what I would do if they were kind of feeling a little bit down on themselves, or frankly, if they started getting a little sure of themselves, being like, oh, the croissant's not perfect, but anybody's going to love a croissant from us, I'd go hit another bakery on my own to work, buy out an array of different pastries and put it on the table and be like, before we start our shift, let's pick this apart and then I'll tell you whose it is. Right?
Yeah.
It did two things.
Good
It
idea.
reinvigorated that our product was substantial, or they're like, ooh, we have to do better, and it would almost create this, animalistic drive. So
Yeah, and I think you brought up too, like, as I was preparing of like what can I share about this, I have some pretty like concrete, I'm a pretty like I want good information about this stuff. So I can tell you the process. So at our bakery, we were a 3 location custom cake shop. And Alex asked specifically around custom products. And I think there's parts to that. One is what we've covered in the first 15 minutes here is the baking side of it. Things that aren't custom, breads, croissants, cakes. You're producing cakes in a way where you might have like an issue with your yellow cake or your sponge or your chocolate sponge or your red velvet sponge, which really is managed with quality in the mixing process, in following SOPs to make sure that the order you're doing things matters. But there's a real different, in my opinion, process that you need to ride through when you're building cakes or cookies from a custom perspective after the baking is done. So we're talking from either freezer or from oven to the end result where the customer is being greeted with the like opening of the box. And so our bakery was a 3 location, fully custom. That's what we positioned ourselves at. We were called a cakery. So we did high volume, anywhere from 100 to 350 cakes a weekend, wedding cakes between 40 and 60 a weekend at the height of our business. And so we were pumping out lots of custom work. So obviously quality control was a huge part of our position, and how I can tell you we did that. We didn't have a quality control team. Everybody was kind of part of it. And we did it through systems. We actually used BakeSmart in our bakery. I shared a little bit about that's how I ended up here. But I would say that if you had to name a department in our bakery as quality control, it would be our packing team. So our packing team was and we had systems built into their workflow so that they would be the final eye before that custom item was put into a box, that they were the final check. The decorators had to check the filler frosting. So we assembled our cakes in an assembly line thing. We had a different team basically that pulled sponge, cut and filled, and then crumb coated, moved on to a team of finishing decorators. We managed anywhere at the height of our business, like 25 decorators. At the low of our business, like between a dozen and 15 decorators. Everybody had their own stations. Everybody knew what their role was in the chain, in the assembly line of a cake. So a custom order would hit the hands of, easily 4 to 5 different employees. So systems mattered a lot, because if you didn't have systems set up as it moved through, and a ball got dropped, you had to be able to know where the hole in your system was. So how we managed that was we used deco tickets from BakeSmart. Originally, we hand wrote tickets, and that ticket would be carbon copied. One would hang in a clipboard in a packing room so that the packers expected this, right? That was our way to know, like the packing team, like, what am I expecting to get? And then another version of that ticket would move through production so it would go to every station it would hit basically.
With that cake, yeah.
With that cake. And then as we grew and we started to lose our control over, like, okay, we just know that, Peggy Sue was the filler. When we had 5 fillers now, we needed to know, like, who filled this cake. So then we would start having our fillers actually initial the cake ticket that moved through the production, and then the finishing decorator would initial it. So we knew who to go to if the decoration was wrong or whatever. Specifically, our packers would go to that person and say, hey, the name was spelt wrong, or this clearly says purple roses.
really quick, I think what I see a lot of bakeries do, and what it sounds like you guys did very well, um, maintaining that accountability in your quality process, not in a negative way, not in a you did this wrong, but in a hey, I'm a decorator, I'm putting my stamp on this work that I just did. That's absolutely huge. And I've seen a lot of bakeries pump out a decent product, but there's really not a lot of pride or accountability in the middle of the process, like the stations you're talking about. So I think
Before it gets top decoed, was it straight when they stacked and crumb coated it? Was the
Totally.
filling done? Was there enough layers in between, right?
So
Yeah.
it gave the accountability to your
Yep.
finishing decorator who got a cake that was lopsided to go back to the person who built their cake and say, hey, can you focus on it? Look at this. And so, yeah, Heather, that's such a great point, is that throughout the system supported team managing each other, not managing each other, but just holding each other as part of this quality level.
It's accountability. It's peer-to-peer accountability, which is a big part of culture that I think is sometimes missing in a bakery, right? You said it earlier where you're like, I'm not going to go back and shout or yell at this person because something was wrong. I'm going to go back and look for a training opportunity, ask, if they had questions or inconsistent training on this product, and it highlights an area in which you can help them improve, which will then enhance quality later. And with that also, Jeremy puts out the quality cakes every time he stacks and crumb coats. That guy's awesome. Maybe we flag him for promotion, future trainer. He's now responsible for training.
Totally.
There's so many different ways that you can use that quality control process, and expand
And it's
on
not
it.
about, it's not about being a jerk. Like I remember at one point in a different career and outside of the bakery industry, somebody had once told me, a mentor of mine at a job told me, there's only 3 reasons somebody doesn't do what you've hired them to do. And I was like, oh, please tell me, what are the 3 reasons? Because 3 seems easy and manageable. The first is they don't know. And that falls on, hey, we're missing systems. We're missing, the owner hasn't, or the manager hasn't given me clear direction. The second is they know, but they don't understand. Okay. So now we're saying, okay, this isn't a system problem. This is a person that hasn't really either connected with the role or the system. Like, what can I do to train this one employee up? And the third and final reason is this person doesn't care. And that is the only time that that person doesn't care, that you actually now have an HR decision to make in terms of, does this person need to even be on my team or not? But once you're able to know that it's one of these 3 issues, it gives you now the ability to either fix your systems, help train up somebody into a system that you have established, or, hey, this person is actually a liability to my business because they have the system, they understand it, they just don't care to follow it. Now I need to get them out of the role.
I'm going to throw one more on there. Okay. They have been trained. They made a mistake, but you're an asshole and they don't want to come talk to you. That's the 4th thing for me. If you make yourself unapproachable as a trainer or a leader, your staff is going to do everything they can to avoid being yelled at, because the reception that they're giving by saying, I don't understand this, isn't being received by management, right? So a big part of quality control is how you handle the interaction when quality isn't met, right? Is this a teaching moment? Is this a conversation? Or am I going to come down here and kick a bucket and be like, bah! You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Because I guarantee you're going to get results instantly, but it's not long lasting. Right?
Yeah.
So
I would agree. I would actually, and especially in the bakery industry, when there are so many spinning plates that you're keeping up as a leader, that sometimes I had a conversation with somebody like, why did you sell the bakery? Like, why did you personally not want it? You seem to love the industry and I think you could have done it. And I said, I didn't like the person I had to be, because I didn't handle the stress of plate spinning, which is really the job. There's so much to keep going in a bakery. And then when people, and that was just my personality. My personality was that then when I had somebody that didn't do it, I wasn't nice like I wanted to be. I want to treat people in a way that the business seemed to strip me of, and I didn't have the healthy boundaries and the healthy. So for me, it didn't feel like the right choice. So yeah, and I think that a lot of bakeries make that mistake where they don't we can hear about like, hey, the new workforce, the younger workforce is so hard to manage, or people just don't care enough. And I do think we need to fight back on that a little bit and say, because there are bakery owners we talk to that say, hey, I love this new young workforce. They come in, and as long as they feel respected, connected to a process, they're given clear rules, they actually
They're unstoppable.
love to work.
They're
They love to
unstoppable.
work.
100%.
Correct.
And that's and going back to quality control, and that is, if you give somebody the expectation to look to, the tools to get there, the training and the education and guidance to provide it, when you have that honest conversation about what about this product did we think was acceptable, and they tell you, you might go, oh, my oven's broken, oh, there's too many tines missing on my whisk, and that's and then it becomes, it's not a ingredient or process issue. It's things that I overlooked as a busy owner manager that I didn't clue into. So now I can take immediate action on that and reinvigorate and re-empower people to quality control and quality check, right? The wrappers and packers, Shell, we did the same thing for all of our wholesale things and anything going cross town. Our production facility for cakes was one location that fed the other two. My wrappers and packers were encouraged to speak up if product wasn't good and had the authority to out of stock product if they didn't like the way it looked, right? And so the way we handled that internally was I set up a Slack channel for them, which allowed them to anonymously post pictures of product to me and said, we decided not to send this out because we didn't feel that it met the quality. I didn't put the expectation of them going to the bakers because that's conflict and hostility, but it then gave me a reason to then talk to the bakers the next day and be like, what the hell happened? And it kept the animosity down between them. But if you give them the tools and you point the path, they're going to feel good about the product. Then when they're out with their friends and they see the stuff that they packed in a box in one of our customer stores, they can go, I did that.
Totally. So, I love that. That's so great. And then I think one of the things that you had mentioned earlier that triggered this thought in me is when there's a quality issue, let's say your chocolate sponge, right? You're getting more complaints. That was something that happened in our bakery actually, where we were making, we started from scratch natural as well. And then as the business grew in volume, we moved to cake mixes to like supplement. Basically, we would doctor our cake mixes to make sure that it was like still our cake. But we did take the shortcuts because you have to you don't have to, but when you hit a certain point at volume and you making money, you got to kind of sometimes do that. So we were having a problem with our chocolate sponge, right? And there was a lot of feedback coming in from customers. And at one point I remember, my dad being really hard to convince something's wrong with his chocolate cake. And we were like, okay, we're doing a blind taste test. This is the only way that we can get you to see it. And it's similar to Heather being like, hey, I'm going to go do a blind taste test with my bakers that are like, no, our croissants are fine. And then we're showing competition. And that's what we did. I've actually, in a consulting role that I'm working with a bakery on right now, he's merging a bunch of different bakeries under one roof. And I encourage them as they're trying to figure out their menu moving forward. You want to take the best out of this bakery, the best out of this bakery. And there's a emotional connection to a recipe or an emotional connection to a product that you sell that you're like something's off with it, because there's a quality issue here that the public at large is coming back for. And we got to get off our box here and say blind taste tests are such a powerful way to like have like that moment where you're like, oh, well, maybe my chocolate cake needs to be fixed. And we did. And we fixed our chocolate cake because that was what took my dad over the ledge. And he was like, you know what? I got a problem with my chocolate cake.
Arie, you'll appreciate this one. I had a baker named RJ who was from Jersey. I friggin' love the guy, right? When he came into the bakery as a manager, we were still hand coring Granny Smith apples for all of our apple pie. Okay, we did 1,800 pies in 2 days at Thanksgiving. Our number one pie was the apple pie, and he was just like, he came in and he's like, I'm not doing it, and I'm like, you have to. It's our number one seller. Like, we can't change the recipe. And he's like, bet. Okay, hold on just a second. And then 2 days later, he came blind taste test and told me which one is your recipe, which one is mine.
Mhm.
and I couldn't tell the difference. And that was such a kick in the ass for me, frankly, pardon my
Mhm.
language, that I was like,
No,
oh,
really?
I need to start looking at things in a different way. And
Mhm.
what it did is it improved the bottom line financially,
Mhm.
because it was frozen, IQF frozen apples.
Mhm.
The production team was thrilled, right,
Yep.
that they didn't have to do it anymore, and it was more consistent product. Yeah,
It's
well,
like
we had a
Yeah,
drill. We
fuel
had
the
a
carpal
drill.
tunnel, you know? Like,
We had a drill, like you stab it on, and then we had a
oh,
drill.
yeah,
It was a lot of fun,
yeah.
but it did. I mean, it cut down the
time.
production time,
Mhm.
everything. It was amazing. I was like, okay, I'm going to open my eyes to this. And so, blind taste test for quality control is the win.
Yeah.
You can tell
Well,
me what's
Mhm.
wrong with this, like.
yeah, another
So,
bakery where they're trying to figure out their freezing process,
Yeah.
like figuring out, do you need to wrap every layer, or can you do a hotel wrap on a pan, or can you just are you moving through enough volume that you can just like use a cabinet in your freezer, or a sleeve, a rack sleeve, just to cut down on on the production time, because you're
yeah,
looking to like make sure you're operating as efficiently as possible. So
right.
I think doing a blind taste test of like different ways things are actually moving through your freezing process. Do it the most, time consuming way, mid consuming way, and the fastest way, and see the same cake produced on the same day that's made 3 days later. Do you taste the difference? Do you notice a drier cake sponge because it was not wrapped in the really time consuming way? If the answer is no, then you've just figured out how to like streamline some operational stuff here.
So,
Um,
let me
so
ask you about this, Ari, from a broad bulk production standpoint.
Yeah.
Somebody produces an entire batch of something that's not,
Yeah.
QC. It's not appropriate. Do you then risk overtime to reproduce that product, which
Mhm.
then drives up the cost of it, or do you say, all right, we'll come back again and try it tomorrow, we're out of stock?
Um, well, if it's okay, that's a tricky one. If it's something that can wait, hey, we'll try again tomorrow. Um, that's fine. If there's no pressure to get it done. If it's something that needs to be done, we're doing it. I don't, or hey, if your managers are on salary and your bakers need to go, guess who's staying late? It is
Yep,
what it is.
yep.
My thing is more not necessarily time focused, but where I ran into a conflict with a lot of bakeries that I worked in wasn't necessarily the time. It was you make a batch of cake batter, okay? You pan it, you bake it off. Clearly something isn't right. Okay. They're flat, they taste off, whatever. I've worked in some bakeries in the past where, to be honest, a lot of the owners were like, hey, we're using that. We're not throwing that away. We're selling it. That's going in the case. You know what I mean? We're
Yeah.
using it. To me, the time stuff is flexible. What's not flexible to me is, am I then going to worry about some overtime to fix that batch, to remake a new batch of cakes? I am absolutely going to invest the time, because I'm not going to sell garbage product. I'm not going to sell
No.
something that I know is subpar just to save what, 40, $50 on
Yeah.
cake batter and a couple hours for the labor. And I get it. Labor's not cheap and product's not cheap. Absolutely. But to me, with quality product being the most important thing that you can manage, along with the safety of your customers and employees, it's a no-brainer. Spend the
You
time,
can't.
redo it,
You
do it.
can't cut corners. You can't cut corners on that. And so that's the
Exactly.
thing too, is like one bad cupcake is worth 25 decent
Yeah.
cupcakes. One bad cupcake's going to do more damage
Yep.
than 100 of everybody's rave reviews,
Mhm.
right? Everybody's scrolling for that one-star review to find out what it is that they complained about, right?
Exactly.
On your reviews. And so, I would challenge my team, if they put something bad out. One, I was always, okay, this sucks. Did you throw away the batch? Or did you leave
Right.
it in the
Right.
walk-in and not tell
Right.
anybody that this batter sucks
Hmm.
first? Do that. Take the problem and follow it all the way back.
Hmm.
Get rid of everything so that we don't do that again. One. And then two, what can we do with this, right? blueberry muffins that didn't rise. They taste good, but texturally they're weird. Crumble them up, throw them on a sheet pan. Now we've got a blueberry topper for some one-off weird thing that we can do, right? So how can we recycle this product that doesn't take additional labor? Can we turn these into a biscotti or something, right? So
100%.
But that was the fun of the bakery we were in, which you said earlier, I'm okay with your, not having a uniform. We didn't, didn't have a uniform.
Exactly.
I was just excited if you showed up and you had closed-toe shoes on. Congratulations, you wore the proper footwear to work today.
one thing that like, I don't know, maybe I want to preach if people are watching or listening, like, and you mentioned it earlier, are people afraid to come to you with problems or mistakes or whatever? When it comes to quality, one technique that I had was I never wanted people to, feel anxious about coming to me for anything. It's like, raising kids. You want them to, tell you when something's wrong. You don't want them to be nervous about it. So whenever there was a mistake, which, hey, I made plenty of mistakes. Pretzel dough, for instance, was one in my last bakery that seemed to always get messed up. It wasn't even complicated. It was just the one recipe that always got messed up, right? So if somebody made a mistake, as the leader, I would jump in. I would help them take the dough and throw it away, and the whole time be reassuring, hey, I've messed this up way more times than you have, okay?
Absolutely.
So if you take that approach, be reassuring to your crew, especially, if they're a 16-year-old kid who doesn't have a ton of experience, don't burn them right away. Be constructive, be supportive, and, the mistakes will reduce over time, and
That's a great approach. Something else I did with those folks too to improve upon it is a few days later, I'd remember to go back and ask them to teach me something. Hey, remind me how to do this. I don't remember. And then rebuild up that confidence that they've gotten them to overcome that mistake. Because if people are anything like me, I have lingering, like rejection sensitivity where it's like, oh man, 3 days ago I super messed up and now it's on my plate again today. I hope I don't do it. I'm, overthink it. But if a supervisor or a manager came to me and was just like, hey, can you show me how to do this thing because I'm not great at it? It would build that confidence back up, but I think that there's so many.
Oh, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
No, I like to detach conversations too. So, if I'm helping so-and-so dump a bowl of cake batter out, that's bad, whatever it is. And I can tell they're red, they're visibly upset, they're frustrated that they mess it up, whatever. I would verbally say, listen, don't even worry about it. It's just cake batter. I've messed this up so many times. And then I would intentionally change the subject to something completely different. What was it last time there was a mistake in my last bakery? I think it was it was the Olympics or something like that. So I would cut and I'd be like, okay, we're going to dump this cake batter, but hey, did you see that like bobsledding last night? That was crazy. Like, I don't even know how those people do that. I would completely change the conversation. So I'm not like, look at this cake batter that we're dumping.
Yeah. Dig. Yeah. People who have pride in what they do are going to beat themselves up more than you ever could.
Exactly.
Right.
Exactly.
And so what I'm hearing though, from everything that we're saying for quality control, it starts with culture, right? Starts with making sure that people feel comfortable in knowing what they're doing, knowing what the expectation is that's clear, consistent, and communicated with no silent expectations. Having the ability to comfortably come to you and make a decision in the moment that they know you're going to support. And then improving upon that if something doesn't work out, right? So, Shellie, when I worked for your space, I knew that when I got in the morning, one of the things that I had to do is I took my clipboard of all of the things that came through baking, came through crumb coating, came through top deco, was sitting on the shelf ready to get boxed, and it was drilled into me, this is the most important part of the day. You have the most important part in the bakery. But you have to go and look at every cake that's due today, make sure that it's accounted for, make sure that it's spelled correctly, make sure that the decoration matches what the description is. Because the biggest challenge too for custom stuff is taking the vision of a cake that somebody has in their head, putting it on paper in a way that somebody who's not involved in this order process can read it, understand it, produce it, and then presenting it to the original person. It's like this weird game of cake telephone, right?
Yep.
And so quality control at Shelle's Place was, Heather, if this is wrong, like, you're the last person to touch it before it goes out the door. And when that person shows up to pick it up, that staff member also goes, name. Like, that's just the part of it. And if you need to train that into people and ingrain that in, and also showcase that as a leader, this is the way we do this because I'm going to do that as well. You know, I think that's huge too, right? So
I think a big thing with custom items is the handling after the transaction as well. You know, you're always going to have issues with custom items of, hey, you know, this didn't look exactly like I wanted it to, or this, you know, I thought this cake sucked, whatever it may be. I think the customer service aspect and the reputation aspect that we need to maintain as bakers and as retail bakeries is huge, because that's what is going to get people coming back and not going to, you know, get a $10 cake
and
down
I-
the road.
You got it. And I think that a lot of bakeries that are doing high volume cake and they have a reputation of, hey, I want a cake from this bakery because it feels like a celebration. There's tradition built into this bakery, are shifting into this like custom enough mindset and letting the 3D, the cake's going to take 7 hours to make, to the home baker, because in the end we're running businesses that need to be profitable. And if I can turn out 40 happy birthday moms with beautiful buttercream flowers on it as a business owner all day long, I want to sell those best on my e-commerce store, so I'm not paying like crazy overhead to sell the cake. My decorators know how to do them with their eyes closed. And yeah, they're still fun to do, the big, you know, fondant cakes that are shaped, and they're fun. They're absolutely part of it, but you don't have to build your business on the backbone of that like you did even 20 years ago for us. We took
Yeah.
every cake that we could, and now we're seeing bakeries at large, kind of like literally at large, I say, the bigger you are, or more profitable you want to be. So I think they're both. You're kind of like shifting into this mindset where you're leveraging technology for the sales process. You're leveraging production reports that are consistent because you've streamlined your product, and then you're actually running a more profitable business. And that might mean saying no to certain things, and that's okay too.
Oh, yeah.
So I think there's lots to discuss here. We're at about 45 minutes. I think we should probably think about
Oh,
wrapping
yeah,
it
we're
up.
getting into it. Yeah.
we could talk about this all day. Thankfully, we've got our next recording to go through. I would love to hear feedback on what other people are doing for quality control checks. And we were always hungry to kind of take these things on, because remember, while we might not be in the day-to-day operations, we still do talk to each one of you and a bunch of you throughout the week, right? And so as we continue to kind of like share knowledge and gain knowledge, we would love to share that with the bakery community as a whole. So let us know what you did for quality control, and and then what you want to hear us talk about next time. I have some ideas, but
I was going to say one thing I just want to put out there. I want to hear, we talked a little bit about like little tricks and techniques and stuff that we did, like Shellie, you were talking about like wrapping pans or, whatever it may be. I would love to do an episode on, tricks or techniques or maybe weird little hacks or something that our customers have. I think that'd be fun just to dig into it a little bit.
I would love to hear it. Yeah. Comment on the thread what we should talk about next week for
cool
sure.
Stuff. Yeah.
Cool.
Anyway.
Sweet. We hope everybody has a great week.
All right, guys, have a great week. We'll talk to you soon. Shellie, you have to stop the recording.
Do I?
Yeah.